For decades, global wealth migration followed a predictable, almost mechanical pattern. A high-net-worth individual would register a holding company on a remote Caribbean island, shift their legal domicile to a low-tax jurisdiction, and leave the actual management of their assets exactly where it was. Today, trillions of dollars in private capital are flowing into the United Arab Emirates. A common professional assumption is that this represents another wave of zero-tax arbitrage, wealthy families executing the same offshore playbook in a new desert location. That assumption is factually incorrect. For complex, modern family offices managing billions in assets, pure tax-driven relocation is structurally dead. Over the past decade, developed nations introduced aggressive countermeasures to stop capital flight. They implemented exit taxes. They expanded beneficial ownership visibility, which gives regulators the ability to see the ultimate human owner of any corporate asset. They also enforced controlled foreign company rules. CFC rules are tax laws specifically designed to prevent businesses from shifting profits to low-tax jurisdictions without genuine operational presence. The most significant change came through the tightening of global substance tests. Regulators and tax authorities no longer care where a holding entity is registered. They demand undeniable proof of where the actual decisions are made, where the investment committee meets, and where the risk is managed. Maintaining a paper domicile in one country, while the executive team operates from London or New York, creates severe enforcement and reputational risk. A separation between legal residence and true management is now an active compliance liability. Institutional capital adapted to these regulatory pressures by changing the entire nature of relocation. Families no longer move legal wrappers. Wealth, governance, and decision-making authority must now migrate together to a single, defensible jurisdiction. This new strategy is called control center relocation. It involves moving the operational command center, the actual boardroom, the analysts, and the legal counsel, rather than solely optimizing the principal's personal tax residence. The United Arab Emirates has captured this specific governance-heavy migration because its ecosystem supports full-stack wealth operations. This diagram outlines the structural shift in global private wealth mobility. On the left, the old model involved moving an individual's legal residence while keeping the assets and operations tied to legacy financial centers. On the right, the new model requires the entire mind and management apparatus to migrate. To achieve defensible substance, families must provide physical evidence. As shown in the right-hand column, this means leasing actual premises, hiring local professionals, and documenting repeatable governance behavior like calendared committee cycles and written investment memoranda. The UAE secures these capital inflows because it provides a predictable interface between personal family life and deep institutional capability. It operates as a comprehensive jurisdiction for private capital, replacing the outdated concept of a mere tax shelter. Beyond regulatory pressure, a structural pivot in how the ultra-wealthy invest their money forced the creation of these physical hubs. Portfolios are no longer dominated by highly liquid, passive public equities managed by external private banks. Capital allocation has moved toward private markets. Families are taking direct private equity stakes, acquiring tangible real assets like logistics centers and infrastructure, and taking control positions in operating businesses. This pivot creates a governance load. Governance load is the administrative, legal, and strategic burden required to actively manage complex, illiquid private investments. You cannot passively hold a manufacturing subsidiary or a commercial real estate portfolio. These assets require continuous oversight. Principals must secure board representation, manage complex refinancing events, dictate capital expenditure, and carefully time their exits. Legacy representative outposts, small remote listening posts that lack true executive authority, collapse under this weight. When decisions have to bounce between a local liaison and a distant home jurisdiction, decision latency increases and deal momentum stops. Co-locating the investment committee, the legal counsel, and the financial analysts inside a single physical jurisdiction eliminates that information asymmetry. The team conducting due diligence sits in the same room as the principal signing the checks. The rotation into private market assets, legally and operationally, forces ultra-high net worth families to build centralized decision-making engines. They need a physical location where capital allocation and governance occur simultaneously. The architecture of wealth management inside the Emirates has matured to meet this exact demand. Historically, early family office presence in the Middle East was cautious and nominal, established primarily to signal regional interest. Family offices in the UAE evolved from representative outposts, handling administrative tasks while decision-making remained offshore, into modern operating hubs. Driven by asset complexity and regulatory substance tests, these centralized hubs now house dedicated teams with absolute executive authority over the global portfolio. Families managing the largest asset bases favor single-family offices. This structure acts as an integrated management company, prioritizing absolute control, confidentiality, and bespoke governance frameworks. Conversely, multifamily offices serve transitioning families by offering shared physical infrastructure, pooled resources, and scalable compliance. They provide institutional-grade oversight for capital pools that may not yet require a standalone entity. Both models converge on operational legitimacy. Whether single or multifamily, these entities require local staff, on-site committees, and documented decision-making to maintain regulatory defensibility. Establishing a full operating hub upgrades a family's physical presence from a regional outpost into a sovereign-level institutional command center. Placing a multi-billion-dollar command center in any jurisdiction requires a precise set of macroeconomic conditions. Capital of this scale plans in decades, not quarters. Institutional capital carefully evaluates and prices non-market risk. Non-market risk is the threat of financial loss caused by political instability, sudden regulatory shifts, or legal unpredictability. Capital demands three channels of continuity. The UAE provides institutional persistence through multi-decade economic planning and a stable partnership narrative. Legal certainty forms the bedrock, requiring formalized asset registration, specialized commercial courts, and contracts enforced exactly as written. When new laws are introduced, predictable, phased implementation allows family offices to plan their compliance architecture years in advance, avoiding the operational friction of reacting to sudden legislative shocks. This compares opposing policy frameworks. Many jurisdictions frame private wealth as a social imbalance to be extracted. In contrast, the UAE explicitly frames private wealth as a productive, systemic partner necessary for national growth. This posture translates into active co-investment and risk-sharing between sovereign entities and private families. By aligning financial interests, the state actively suppresses the threat of capital flight during periods of global geopolitical stress. Sophisticated capital ignores political slogans. Looking at the center of this economic model, investors evaluate execution credibility. They look for completed infrastructure projects, met regulatory timelines, and delivered logistics capacity. Policy continuity functions as a structural anchor. Eliminating non-market surprises lowers the risk premiums that family offices apply to long-horizon investments. Executing a true control center relocation involves migrating a multi-generational household alongside the senior executive staff. Factors like advanced healthcare, international education, and physical security are frequently miscategorized as personal luxury preferences or mere lifestyle amenities. This diagram maps out how these external nodes function directly as operational infrastructure. High-quality living conditions prevent the geographic fragmentation of the family household, ensuring the operational synergy required to keep the wealth and the governance in the same room. This framework places intergenerational permanence at the core. Families need an environment where governance survives the founder. At the top right, legal structures like foundations separate economic benefit from voting control, ensuring predictable wealth transmission without asset fragmentation. Long-duration residency visas tie the family's personal stability directly to their capital commitments. It replaces the anxiety of temporary, constantly renewing legal status with a multi-decade horizon. The combination of lifestyle stability and legal durability constructs an environment where a family's private institution can safely outlive its original architects. The metric for assessing private wealth inflows has changed. The focus is no longer on the raw volume of money entering a border, but on the qualitative difference between transient capital and institutional wealth. This scale weighs the attributes of incoming wealth. Volume-focused capital is opportunistic, reactive, and driven by short-term exits. High-quality capital arrives with defined governance, patience, and a strategy to deeply integrate into the local financial ecosystem. We are watching a transition from highly mobile, nervous wealth that constantly rotates across borders to avoid taxation toward entrenched, confident institutional presence. Capital follows clarity. Modern global wealth no longer seeks dark, unregulated corners of the financial system. It seeks the most stable, legally legible, and frictionless environments available to safely anchor its operations. For the apex of global private wealth, mobility is a relic of the past. Permanence is the ultimate strategic choice.